Hello, friends. I'm Brian. I'm the pastor at Christ United Methodist Church in Waynesboro, PA, and thank you for joining me. And today, which for me is Thursday, but for you, this is actually Saturday the 19th of December. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, for taking your time to watch my videos and to listen in on what I have to say. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Gospel of Luke. We've been reading one chapter a day, making our way along the way through the Gospel of Luke. Today is the 19th. So today we're on chapter 19, which means after today. We've only got 5 more to go. There are 24 chapters in the Gospel of Luke. Yes, I've mentioned that before, but maybe this is the first time you've watched me. So we've got 5 more to go. We're going to finish up on December 24th. On Christmas Eve will be the last day of this. And I'm going to be taking a break. Yeah, I made the comment today, Thursday for you, 2 days ago, about maybe I'd be doing something after this, after I take a little break. And I said that in passing, but I'm getting people saying, oh, yes, what's up next? What's next? I can't wait. I don't know, okay? I don't know. I'll have to work on that. Maybe we'll come up with something. Anyway, but today we're going to do chapter 19 and finish our way through here. I have forgotten to mention the last couple days that if you have questions or comments, please feel free to comment on the stream with your questions, with your comments. Normally, when I'm live, I'm able to see them, at least some of them, not always right away, but I will respond, especially if it's a question, something that needs to be addressed. Now, this is not live. I'm recording this on Thursday, and it'll be uploaded for Saturday at 9 o'clock so that you can see it. But you can still leave a comment, and I will get back to you with that. You can also shoot me a text, which I will get back to, but since, like I said, Friday, Saturday, might not get back to you right away. Cell phone 570-351-1619. You can use that for reasons other than just commenting on this. If you needed to chat with me about something, you need help with something, let me know. Let me know. So, chapter 19. Sometimes there's stories that are so well known that we've heard so many times, we think we understand them, and we even jump to the end without really going through it. This could be one of them. This is a very, very popular story, so to speak. It's a very well-known story. So I'm going to ask you, just as I did the other day when I was reading the parable of the lost son, aka the parable of the prodigal son, the parable of the lost son. I asked you to try to hear it for the first time, so I'm going to ask you to do the same thing now. And actually, this could be keep your eyes open, but hear this story with new ears. Hear it as if you're hearing it for the first time, and try to truly experience it. See what kind of things you can picture in your mind as you're hearing it. And in addition to hearing the story, what other sounds do you hear? What smells? That kind of stuff. Because we'll think about those kind of things. It's an interesting way of reading scripture called Lectio Divina, which asks you to do that. You read through it once just to read it, and you read it, and you see what kind of senses are touched by it in different ways. So anyway, hear the story for the first time. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through town. Pause. Remember, Jesus is still on his way to Jerusalem, right? He's still on his way to Jerusalem. Ooh, I already had a shot. He's on his way to Jerusalem, and he's heading south. And he's at Jericho, which is about 15 miles, as the crow flies, about 15 miles from Jerusalem. Okay, so I'm going to read this again. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through town. A man there named Zacchaeus, a ruler among tax collectors, was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he couldn't because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree so he could see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to that spot, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down at once. I must stay in your home today." So Zacchaeus came down at once, happy to welcome Jesus. Everyone who saw this grumbled, saying, "He is gone to be the guest of a sinner." Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone, I repay them 4 times as much." Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this household, because he too is a son of Abraham. The human one came to seek and save the lost. Pause. End of that story. So, like I said, it's fairly well-known, popular story, and we think we know everything about it, including me. But sometimes when you read a story again, something jumps out at you. So I'm going to talk about a couple points in here that jumped out at me recently through the reading and through some commentaries that I read. Zacchaeus is not referred to as a thief. In the parables in Luke, when someone's been doing something wrong, they're usually told right up front what's taking place, what's going on. For instance, the dishonest manager, or Luke will say something like that. He doesn't say that about Zacchaeus. We're not told that he was dishonest. We're not told that he was a thief as a tax collector, many of whom were at the time, because the law allowed them to collect as much money as they wanted and keep whatever they didn't have to give to the government. It was a way of supplementing your income. The government paid you some, but if you wanted to collect more than you had to, you can keep the rest. We're not told that Zacchaeus did any of those things. Apparently, just the fact that he was a tax collector and that he was rich was enough to make people think he was a cheat. Okay? We're not told that he was, but we're told that he was a ruler among tax collectors. So he oversaw a bunch of tax collectors. We're not told that he did anything wrong. People just assumed it. They liked looking down on Zacchaeus, both literally, since he was vertically challenged, and metaphorically, since he was a tax collector, someone they had to give money to. And so they spread rumors. You can't judge a book by a cover, right? Now, the other thing that kind of jumped out at me in my readings here, in this reading and in the commentary that I was looking at, is Zacchaeus, how Zacchaeus responds. He must have heard the people grumbling, even if he didn't hear words, knew what they were saying. He stopped and he spoke right to Jesus. He stood up for himself. He stood up for himself. He didn't cower, he didn't hide, he didn't run away. He stood up for himself to defend himself. This isn't the same kind of reaction that the Pharisee praying in the temple had, who stood up during his prayer and wouldn't confess his sins and talked about all the great things that he was or did. That was different. Here, Zacchaeus is defending himself against lies, against rumor. And he says, I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anyone, I repay them 4 times as much. The Greek is present tense. It's not future. We're not talking about a change in heart, a change in mind, a change in life. Zacchaeus is not laying out a plan for tomorrow, a plan for how he's going to make things right. He's saying the things that he's already been doing and is doing. I give half away. I repay people if I have cheated them. And so Jesus says salvation has come to this household. Perhaps he's just really speaking about himself, the fact that he is going to see him because he is a child of Abraham. Continuing. As they listened to this, Jesus told them another parable because he was near Jerusalem, about 15 miles away. And they thought God's kingdom would appear right away. He said, a certain man who was born into royalty went to a distant land to receive his kingdom and then return. He called together 10 servants and gave each of them money worth 4 months' wages. He said, do business with us until I return. His citizens hated him. So they sent a representative after him who said, we don't want this man to be our king. After receiving his kingdom, he returned and called the servants to whom he had given the money to find out how much they had earned. The first servant came forward and said, your money has earned a return of 1,000%. The king replied, excellent! You are a good servant. Because you have been faithful in a small matter, you will have authority over 10 cities. The second servant came and said, Master, your money has made a return of 500%. To this one, the king said, you will have authority over 5 cities. I'm going to pause even though we didn't get to the third one yet. There's no way that a person in first century Judea would have earned 1,000% interest on anything. At least not without being dishonest. There's no way a person in first century Judea was going to get 500% on anything without being dishonest. And yet, they're commended because they actually did something with what they were given. They were clever, but probably would have been, at least at first, seen as dishonest to the hearers of this story from Jesus. They would have needed to open their minds a little bit to get the point. Another servant came and said, Master, here's your money. I wrapped it up in a scarf for safekeeping. I was afraid of you because you are a stern man. You withdraw what you haven't deposited, and you harvest what you haven't planted. The king replied, I will judge you by the words of your own mouth, you worthless servant. You knew, did you, that I'm a stern man, withdrawing what I didn't deposit and harvesting what I didn't plant? Why then didn't you put my money in the bank? Then, when I arrived, at least I could have gotten it back with interest. He said to his attendants, take his money and give it to the one who has 10 times as much. But master, they said, he already has 10 times as much. He replied, I say to you that everyone who has will be given more, but from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for my enemies who don't want me as their king, bring them here and slaughter them before me. After Jesus said this, he continued on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. It's a tough passage. And I think a lot of it is the fact that we don't understand first century customs and and metaphors. Jesus spoke in metaphor all the time. Uh, Metaphors are great. We still use metaphors. I preach using metaphors. Anytime we're changing a story um, to tell it in a new way, we're usually using some form of metaphor in order to do it. Problem is, if you try to stretch a metaphor too far, it breaks. So we don't know exactly what Jesus might have meant. I don't know exactly what Jesus might have meant by that, especially that part about the slaughtering them in front of me, that part there. Because if we read that literally, it's very shocking words, and maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the point from Jesus was to shock his audience. Maybe the point for Luke is to shock his readers, especially the first century readers, to kind of get this. Now, when we look at that whole story, it's very similar to one that Luke told a little bit earlier, a few chapters earlier, back in chapter 8, about the farmer and in the field and stuff like that. So there's similarities in the parables. I think the best thing to get out of this is that God wants us to be faithful with what God has given us, and to do the best we can with what God has given us. Jesus is using money in this story, which and God, when we think that God gives us everything, when we trust in that and believe in that, then yes, even the money we have is a gift from God. So what we do with it, we should do the best we can for God for it. But we can also change that and just think about all of our abilities and all of the spiritual gifts that God has given us, and not hide them, not wrap them up and with the intention of just giving them back to God at the last judgment, but to actually use all of those gifts, to put them to work, and to make them grow. So, and then he's going up to Jerusalem. So he's not far from Jerusalem. Jericho is about 15 miles away as the crow flies. And so he is now getting really close to Jerusalem. And that's where we're going to pick up the story, verse 29. As Jesus came to Bethphage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, he gave 2 disciples a task. He said, "Go into the village over there. When you enter it, you will find tied up there a colt that no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If someone asks, 'Why are you untying it?' just say, 'Its master needs it.'" Those who had been sent found it exactly as he had said. As they were untying the colt, its owners said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "Its master needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their clothes on the colt, and lifted Jesus onto it. As Jesus rode along, they spread their clothes on the road. As Jesus approached the road leading down from the Mount of Olives, the whole throng of his disciples began rejoicing. They praised God with a loud voice because of all the mighty things that they had seen. They said, "Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, scold your disciples, tell them to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if they were silent, the stones would shout." Pause. Lots going on here. Lots going on here that we need to have the context and understand for. Because why are the Pharisees upset about some noise? They've been criticizing Jesus about all kinds of different things. And today, now this passage, it's really just all about noise. We have to understand everything that's taking place. This is coming up on Passover. It's coming up on Passover. During the time of Passover, a little bit before, like a week so before, the town is going to start to grow. Jerusalem, the population is going to go up a lot. You can think Sturgis, was that South Dakota, during Bike Week. how much the town, how much the community grows in population just for that time when the people go there. And that's what it's like. That's Passover. That's Jerusalem at Passover time. Everybody's coming in, population goes up in an effort to make sure that nobody forgets who's in charge and to remind them who the powerful people are. The Roman leaders, Herod Agrippa in particular, and probably Pontius Pilate as well, would have a parade into the city. They would be coming in um, from the east. They would come in through the east gate of Jerusalem. Herod would be seated on a war horse. Herod would be on a war horse, a big one, I'm sure, all decked out with all kind of fancy regalia, uh, gold and stuff like that, with a large group of soldiers armed to the teeth. Just to remind everybody, I'm the boss around here. We're in charge. Don't try anything. They would even have extra soldiers come into the city, come into the area from other places to make sure that they needed to beef up security. Is basically what I'm saying. And he would come in from the east. Now Jesus had come down from Jericho, so he's on the western side of Jerusalem. He's coming in through the western gate. He's not on a horse. He's not on a war horse. He's on a colt, donkey, depending on which translation you're looking at, right? That's our image anyway of a donkey. But even if it was a colt, like a pony of some kind, that's not a war horse. It's not a war animal, although donkeys are used in war to carry stuff. But symbolically, it's not a war animal. It's not a victorious king coming in. It's an emblem of peace. So if it's a donkey or a colt, whatever, it is a peaceful symbol. So we've got a guy on a horse, a war horse, coming in one side, and a guy on a colt, a peace horse, coming in through the other side, peaceful donkey coming through the other side. We've got this guy coming in from the east with all these soldiers armed to the teeth. We've got Jesus coming in through this gate with unarmed civilians. Jesus really is what this is about. And yes, they're celebrating him as king. They want him to be king. And maybe they still don't get the imagery, but Jesus, it's really a revolutionary moment. This is Jesus throwing things in the face of the Romans. It is nonviolent. It's a nonviolent protest against their violent parade. And so the Pharisees, recognizing that, are worried about how the Romans are going to respond. And that's why they're trying to tell them to quiet things down. They're worried about themselves, and they're worried about the people that are there. They didn't understand everything, but it seems they actually understood the symbolism of Jesus on this colt. Continuing, as Jesus came to the city and observed it, he wept over it. He said, "If only you knew on this of all days the things that lead to peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. The time will come when your enemies will build fortifications around you, encircle you, and attack you from all sides. They will crush you completely, you and all the people within you. They won't leave one stone on top of another within you because you didn't recognize the time of your gracious visit from God." Pause. I know there's not much to go, but you just need to pause there. Luke is writing this towards the end of the 70s, 77, 70, 75, 77, 78, somewhere around there is when Luke is writing this down. What he's writing about has already taken place, because it took place in 69, 70 AD, when Rome uh, the Jews in Jerusalem tried to revolt, or at least some did. Rome came in hard. Rome came in hard, destroyed the city, burned up all kind of stuff, tore down the temple, the second temple, um, and killed many people. Um, and so this passage here that Luke is attributing to Jesus saying has actually already taken place. It's already taken place. So Luke may have altered the language. Luke may have just put all this stuff in there. It doesn't really matter to me if Jesus said these words or Luke did. That doesn't matter. The important thing isn't all of that. It may have been for the people that Luke was writing to. I think the important thing is the last sentence of that. They won't leave one stone on top of another within you. Stop one stone. Leave one stone on top of another within you, within Jerusalem, because Jerusalem's personified. So it's actually this last half of this last sentence, because you didn't recognize the time of your gracious visit from God. Wow. Okay. So, but even in this passage, Jesus is saying about peace versus what's coming, because you missed this chance for peace. You missed this chance for peace. So last few verses, last section here on chapter 19. When Jesus entered the temple, he threw out those who were selling things there. He said to them, "It's written, my house will be a house of prayer, but you have made it a hideout for crooks." Jesus was teaching daily in the temple. The chief priests, the legal experts, and the foremost leaders among the people were seeking to kill him. However, they couldn't find a way to do it because all the people were enthralled with what they heard. Yeah, okay, so that ends the chapter. And lots going on there, lots to talk about, but I'm not going to touch it all. Hit the highlights, so to speak. So Jesus goes in and he throws out the money lenders, the people that were selling things in the temple. This is not a condemnation on all sales in the temple. So don't point to this and say churches shouldn't have craft fairs or silent auctions or whatever, that kind of thing as a fundraiser. Those things are okay because that's not what's going on here. The selling in the temple was a necessary part of preparing people for worship because they needed animals to offer their sacrifices, and the animals needed to be perfect, pure, etc., etc. No blemishes, no broken toenails or whatever. And if a pilgrim is traveling a long distance to get there, you don't want to take your animals with you because the chances are something bad's going to happen to them, at least of which you might get hungry. So you wait until you get there and you buy your animal. The trouble seems to be with two things. The money lenders taking high agios. An agio is an interest rate that a bank charges when you're converting money from one denomination to another, from dollars to pounds or euros, etc., etc. You pay a fee, you pay a premium. Well, these money lenders are charging people for turning whatever money they have into the temple coin, and they're not charging a small fee, they're charging exorbitant fees. The other problem seems to be that they're charging a lot more than the animals are worth, a lot more than they should. They've got little monopolies going on. Hey, you want to buy an ant? You want to buy a ram? I'm the only one in town, pal. So you're going to pay the price. You're going to pay the price. They're taking advantage of people who all they want to do is worship God. They just want to follow the rules. They want to worship God. And they're being taken advantage of. That's the problem. That's the problem. That's why Jesus is upset. And that's why Luke puts this in here, because he has such a passion for poor and for justice and for greedy people. And the other part about that is, my house will be a house of prayer, but you have made it a hideout for crooks. Some translations would say den of thieves. We should understand exactly what that means too. A den of thieves, or a house of crooks, a house for crooks, is a place where a thief would feel comfortable and safe. Okay, it's not necessarily where they do their business; it's where they hang out together, and they're safe. Nobody can hurt them. Nobody could. So they've turned this place, they've turned this temple from a house of prayer into a place where thieves feel comfortable doing whatever the heck they want. Oh, wow. I hope you learned something there. I only learned that back in the spring, when I was doing a study on this. Anyway, that's it for today, folks, for the 19th, because this was day 19 and chapter 19. I will see you tomorrow, my Sunday, at 9 o'clock when we do live for chapter 20. Have a great day.